What's up, everybody? Welcome to Don't Give Up with Jacob. Today, I have a special guest joining me on my show. Not only that, but she is also a licensed psychologist where she founded and owns Psychology Works PLLC. She also has over a decade of clinical experience and specializes in psychological testing and evaluations, and she is neurodivergent and lives with ADHD along with a chronic illness. So it is my pleasure to welcome to my show Dr. Stephanie Steele-Wren.
Thank you so much, Jacob. That's quite the introduction. I appreciate that. That really, yeah, that covers what I do and who I am. Thank you. Great bio.
Anytime. So welcome to my show. I'm so glad you were able to make it today so I could have a nice conversation about your life.
Looking forward to it. All right.
All right, so I have a couple of questions to ask you. Sounds good?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right. So, first off, I want you to give a little introduction about yourself and tell my audience what you do for an everyday living and what inspired you to start doing this for an everyday living.
All right. That is a great question. So I'm thinking where to start with that. Well, day in, day out, like you said, I'm a licensed psychologist and I specialize in psychological assessment. And a lot of the folks who are coming in for testing are suspected to have things like ADHD or autism. So I'm very well versed in the research and everything that's out there and the clinical aspects of neurodivergence just in general. But like you said, I have that lived experience of ADHD as well as chronic illness. I found out last year that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the hypermobile type. And there's actually a huge correlation now in several studies, I think, tying folks with neurodivergence to things like hypermobility, EDS, and things like that, which is just fascinating to me because it's put all of the pieces together for myself in the almost 40 years I've been on this earth. So, um, but when I do testing, a lot of it is computerized. It feels a lot like school. It's not super fun, but it gives us psychologists more of a objective way of looking at somebody versus just going to a counselor each week, which counseling is extremely helpful. That's where I started out in counseling. And then I really started to get super interested into the assessment piece. And it just fascinated me. So I went back to school to get a doctorate and specialize in this area. And uh, I love what I do. I love when folks get their feedback and things just click for them and I can just see it in their faces. I've had people get really tearful because it's been very emotional to finally have someone validate them, I think is what a lot of it is for folks. Just getting that validation that explains a lot of things that they've been wondering about themselves and why they're different and why they feel like they don't fit in anywhere, etc. So, but I think in hindsight, maybe it wasn't at a conscious level, but being undiagnosed and going through the majority of my life undiagnosed and not having resources and things that maybe could have made life a little bit easier, maybe even a little bit more enjoyable. That's probably some subconscious thing going on that pushed me towards really wanting to get into assessment and make sure that people are being given comprehensive assessments that really look at what it needs to and finds out what it needs to. So I love putting all the pieces together. That's why I really love what I get to do, and that it's really changed people's lives in a lot of ways. You would think an assessment could do that, but it certainly can for folks. Yeah.
Wow. Definitely sounds very interesting. I also like to think of putting pieces together like a huge puzzle where you just have no idea where each of the pieces goes and it just takes you hours to solve it, but eventually you figure it out and that's how you figure out what you're going through in your everyday life. And I feel like that's what you're exactly trying to tell me.
I think it's a great analogy. I also love jigsaw puzzles. I always have. they're they're definitely a hobby of mine. So yeah, love that analogy. That's a good one. I may use that when I'm talking to clients if that's cool. I like that.
Wow, definitely sounds interesting. So now I'm going to ask you, how did you learn to trust your neurodivergent brain instead of attempting to try and fix it? Because there have been some times where I tried to fit in, but I don't think it's really worth attempting to fix my brain, right?
I would have to agree with that, just both personally and professionally. I think until I had a, formal diagnosis, I always thought like something was wrong with me. Like I'm the problem, I'm the common denominator in all of these issues in my life. And there are like, I'm creating all of these things for myself. But no matter what I did, you know, go to therapy, get extra help with the subjects I was struggling with, try to make friends, masking a lot. I've done a lot of that over the years. Because I thought I was the problem. And that's why people didn't want to be friends. It's a very loaded question. So I'm trying to think of where to go with my answer because it could go so many ways. But you know, I think the becoming a psychologist is probably where I started to notice that other folks were experiencing a lot of the things that I was, clients that I was starting to see and work with. And so I feel like a lot of my clients have taught me through some way to trust my neurodivergent brain and to be okay with it, to not try and change everything about myself to fit in. So I think more professionally, that's probably where I've done the most work on that. Yeah.
Wow. Definitely sounds very interesting. I've also had some times where I felt like I don't fit in, and I've also had numerous struggles along with that I thought were the reasons why I'm not fitting in, the reasons why I wasn't making friends. But in reality, I learned that that's not true because everybody is different. And that's why you need to figure out who you exactly are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely sounds very interesting. And I've also wanted to mention that I feel like life sometimes gets overwhelming for me, especially including living with autism. So when life felt overwhelming for you with living with ADHD and chronic illness, what was something that helped you keep going instead of giving up?
Really good question. I think it was really just a lot of mindset shifts for me. Instead of trying to be perfect, because I've always been a perfectionist, and I think I've been a perfectionist because if I'm doing everything right, people can't question what's different about me. I think that's been this internal thought I've had kind of in my head operating there like my whole life. So I think changing that and just being able to be myself and not really caring what other people think, that's really helped me so much when things have felt overwhelming. Because not only are sensory experiences overwhelming, work overwhelming, socializing overwhelming, but just dealing with it all together and just being able to let yourself be is made such a big difference. And not trying to always be a perfectionist and just live my life.
Wow. Definitely understand. Like, I understand there were some times where I tried to be perfect as possible, but that's not what always happens every day because nobody is perfect and nobody can do things on the first try, especially when it takes a lot of time for neurodivergent people to learn what they're going through and what they need to do to make themselves happy and enjoy who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
All
I think
right.
another thing too I didn't add was just being like okay with asking for help. and that I didn't have all the answers. That was another just change in how I saw things that really, really helped being able to ask for help. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I agree. Asking for help is also really important, especially when you have a lot of hard work to do and you just don't understand what to do. It's always good to ask for help no matter what. Even adults ask for help sometimes.
We definitely need to, that's for sure. Yeah, that's a good point.